Welcome everyone to this workshop on the Right to Information Act. Before we actually start the main program, I would like to invite the organization which actually made this program possible today. Many of you in the email have already seen the name. It's called the Moneylife Foundation. So before we actually begin, I would like Arvind from Moneylife Foundation to introduce the foundation and what they do.
So good afternoon all of you, and thank you for having me here. And so I'm here on behalf of Moneylife Foundation. So Moneylife Foundation is a not-for-profit organization that works primarily on financial literacy and financial advocacy, and also on consumer advocacy. And this session is in association with the Right to Information Center of Moneylife Foundation. So the primary aim of starting up a Right to Information Center was to try and bring about a little bit of transparency in the system, and also to tweak the governance structure wherever possible and to suit, the regular citizens. So that's primarily the aim of the RTI Center. So I don't want to take much of the time. I think I should request.
Thank you, Arvind. And you can also check the website, and possibly if you're interested in internships and all, you can consider the organization. Let me now introduce the main speaker for the event today. Many of you have already heard of him. He also is a regular contributor to many of the newspapers and the magazines, so you must have read him. But I would give a very brief formal introduction to Mr. Shailesh Gandhi, who is here with us today. He was alumnus of IIT Bombay and first generation entrepreneur, and he actually sold his company to become an RTI activist. And he was part of the national RTI movement from the very beginning, and he was the convener of the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, the NCPRI. You must have heard of the name. And he was also the only RTI activist to have ever been selected as the Central Information Commissioner, which the position which basically deals with the RTI Act. And when he was the CIC, he disposed the record of over 20,000 cases in 3 years and 9 months. He is also he has received a number of awards, including the Nani Palkiwala Civil Liberties Award and MR Pai Award. So without much ado, I would request Mr. Shailesh Gandhi to take over and take us through the presentation. And I hope after your presentation, we'll also have some time for question and answers and discussions. Thank you.
Fellow citizens of India, when I was coming today, I was just thinking to myself, old man has stupid questions. Which is the world's largest democracy? Sure. When I was in school, I was taught that democracy is rule of the people, for the people, by the people. Has that changed by any chance? I mean, since I was in school, it's been a long time. Has it changed? Yes or no?
Yes.
It has changed. It's no longer the definition for democracy.
Theoretically, no.
Sorry?
Theoretically.
Come again?
It hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. Fine. We are a democracy. You said the world's largest democracy. If you go to a government office, do you feel like you are ruler of this nation? Would you feel like that? If you want to go to a government office, will you feel confident when you call up and say, "Would you information though?" Then, is it rule of the people, for the people, by the people? And if it's not rule of the people, for the people, by the people, how is this a democracy? We say this is the world's largest democracy. We don't need to question that. I would submit to you that we say we are the world's largest democracy because we have a reasonably fair system of elections by which we are able to change governments and leaders and our representatives to parliament. That by itself in the constitution are necessary conditions for a democracy, but are not the complete set of conditions. The heart and essence of democracy is the concept that each individual citizen is a sovereign in her own right, and she gives a part of the sovereignty to the state in return for which she gets the rule of law. Sovereignty of the individual, I would submit, is the essence of a democracy, is the essence of human rights. Complete human rights movements depend on the fact, are based on the concept that each individual citizen is a sovereign and deserves respect just because he or she is a human being. Without that, all talk of democracy is a sham. In Hindi we use the word लोकशाही. लोकशाही का मतलब एक ही होता है, लोगों की शहंशाही. You, my friend, if you go to a government office, you should feel like Badshah. Miss, if you go to a government office, you should feel like a begum. But that doesn't really happen, does it? In fact, most times, a citizen goes to a government office and comes out feeling angry, humiliated and frustrated. You don't feel like a ruler of this nation. Once when I was talking about this, a group of young people said, Mr. Gandhi, ये बात तो आप बड़ी चिकनी चुपड़ी कर रहे हैं, बादशाह बना दिया, बेगम बना दिया. देश 130 करोड़ बादशाह और बेगम से चल सकता है क्या? हमें तो लीडर चाहिए, स्ट्रॉन्ग लीडर चाहिए. Can we run a nation with 130 crore badshahs and begums? No. So what nonsense is all this democracy, rule of the people, for the people, by the people? मैं कह रहा हूँ बादशाह या बेगम हर एक हैं, and I would like to submit to you that it actually happens. And I'd like to give you two examples of this. The first example is of the United States of America. I'm not saying everything there is fine, but in terms of democracy, they have a 2-century lead over us. United States of America, an immigrant from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, wherever, if he or she has applied for the green card or the citizenship of the United States, they will very easily pick up a telephone to ask about the status of their application. Are there any defects? Do any corrections have to be made? When is it likely to be considered? So on and so forth. And 99% will get a perfectly logical, rational answer from the other, polite answer from the other side of the phone. Because one human being is called. He or she is not a citizen of that nation. But the fact that one human being is called, there is a courtesy of responding to him or her. You are all first-rate citizens of India. If you applied for change of address in your ration card and you don't get a reply, will you pick up the phone to ask about the status of your application? No. You don't have a telephone. In my time when I was young, we didn't have phones. But you don't have a phone. You have a phone. Then why would you use the phone? Why would you not use the phone? Because you are confident that if you call up, either nobody will pick up the phone. If someone picks up the phone and you ask, मेरा application क्या हुआ, तुम समझते क्या हो अपने आप को, collector हो, minister हो? Even if you go to that office, your chances of getting a rational answer are 50-50. One more example, this is a story all of you know. 125 years back, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi got inside that train in South Africa with a first class ticket. He sat in the compartment and because the white man objected, the railway official came and asked him to get out of that compartment. And the same story is written that Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi sent a telegram complaining about what had happened to him. And in 12 to 14 hours, the railway official came and put him on the next train. Think of the significance of this. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was not a citizen of South Africa. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was a second-rate human being as far as South African law then was concerned because he was a brown man. He was not a white man. Despite that, he makes a complaint and in 12 to 14 hours, the system responds. I will not bother to bore you by asking you कि अगर आप Indian Railway में आज complaint डालेंगे, in 12 to 14 days if you get the response, कुछ चिट्ठी मिल जाएगा, acknowledgement मिल जाएगा, तो you will feel very happy. अरे मेरे को जवाब दिया. This lack of respect for the individual has dominated our entire public policy, has dominated our entire thinking. Some people tell me, "Arey Mr. Gandhi, in India we have so many people. How can we answer everybody?" Please understand, if I have so many people, I also have so many people to employ. And therefore, acknowledging and answering the individual citizen, to my mind, is the fundamental test of a democracy. I call it the telephone test of democracy. कि अगर मैं phone करूँ, मुझे phone पे जवाब मिलना चाहिए rational from the other side, which doesn't happen nowadays. Of course, we've advanced on to the IVR, तो वो गोल गोल घूमता रहता है. You can't talk to a human being. Respect for the individual is the basis of democracy and is the fundamental reason why I believe right to information is our biggest tool. It didn't directly relate there, but it is the biggest tool to establish the sovereignty of the individual citizen. I'm hoping at the end of this talk, hopefully you will understand about right to information as much as I do. But apart from that, when you go out of that door, you will start believing that you are the Badshah or Begum of this nation. If you believe that, lots of things follow. As Badshah or Begum, you have rights, you have duties also. If things are not okay, meri zimmewari hai. I'm hoping to convey that thought to you and to leave that thought with all of you. The first such transparency law in the world was made in Sweden on 2nd December 1776, 250 years back. After that, for nearly a century and a half, other countries did not adopt such laws. In the last century, over 105 or 106 countries have adopted such laws. They are known by 3 different terms. Freedom of information, FOI, access to information, ATI, right to information, RTI. These are synonymous words for the same concept, transparency in the government. We said democracy is rule of the people, for the people, by the people. Therefore, do I own the government? Do you own the government? Yes or no? As a ruler, do you own the government? Therefore, every table, tube light, chair, plane, tank, car belongs to me. Would that be right? No. But if I am ruler, why does it? If you are the ruler, how come it doesn't belong to you? Come on, make a guess. Do you agree you are the ruler? Yes, miss, do you agree you are the ruler? If you are the ruler, does everything in India belong to you? Everything that we call government belong to you? Then who does it belong to?
Collectively owned.
Sorry?
Collectively owned.
Collectively, yes, but you individually also own it. But you can't take it home because you are collectively owning it. All the information in the government, computers, files, cupboards also belongs to you. Therefore, the default mode is that that information you have a right over. And by giving you that information, you are not depriving the other 130 crore people. If you take the car away, you will deprive others. But if you take the information away, you are not depriving otherwise. Therefore, just remember, the default mode is I own the government, I own the information, it belongs to me. I do not need to justify anyone to any reason. Now we take you through some of the important parts of the law. Some of you may be lawyers. Are any of you lawyers? Okay, fine. But let me assure you, you don't need to be a lawyer to understand right to information. It's an extremely simple law. It's a self-contained law and it overrides all other laws as far as giving of information is concerned. Therefore, you do not need to know any other law. Just knowing right to information is adequate to be able to practice this and to be able to argue and understand this law. Information, the description is given there. Information means any material in any form, etc., etc., etc. But in simple terms, let me explain to you. What exists is information, what does not exist is not information. Right to information is not right to interrogation. It's right to information. Therefore, supposing you ask what is the meaning of this law, you would not get a response unless there is a record stating what is the meaning of the law. If there is an illegal building somewhere and you say, I want information about this building in so and so place, you will see a whole building. And if the government tells you there is nothing on record or there is no building on record, that's the correct position. It's not expected that the government officer must go and take a look and figure out whether the building is there. If you ask, if I apply for this job, will I get it? That's not seeking information. Information is what is on record. Just remember this carefully and you will understand this very well. Who has to give information? The law defines what's called public authority. Public authority, A, B and C, effectively covers everything that we call government. State government, central government, panchayat, local municipal corporation, all of these are covered in A, B and C. D says by notification issued or order made by the appropriate government. Then all deemed universities come about because of a notification issued by the government. Therefore, all deemed universities are also public authorities under the law. All public authorities have to give information. They are liable to give information. And includes any body owned, controlled or substantially financed. Non-government organizations substantially financed directly or indirectly by funds provided by the appropriate government. Any other body which may be called a private body, but if it is controlled by government or owned by government, because it's owned by government, most of our nationalized banks are public authorities. Substantially financed. They may not be owned by government, but if there is substantial finance given to them, they are public authority. Have you all heard of Mumbai Metro One Private Limited? Have you heard of Mumbai Metro One Private Limited? The train that operates, the metro that operates from Warsaw to Ghatkopar. Are you aware of this?
Yes.
Whose company is it? Reliance. Sure. Yes. I had heard that government has some substantial finance in this company. So I asked them for some information. And they responded saying, Mr. Gandhi, don't you understand? We are a private limited company. We are a Reliance company. We are not a public authority. So why should we give you any information? We are not obliged to give you any information. So I dug a little bit deeper. Just little. And this is what I found. The government has put 780 crore rupees into MMOPL, Mumbai Metro One Private Limited. 780 crores cash. Plus 600 crores worth of land has been given for the project. Phukat, wo ताइजे में दिया. How much money would Reliance have put in? The whole logic for public-private partnerships is supposed to be that the private company brings in expertise and brings in money. Expertise, who do we think has better expertise, government or Reliance? In terms of railways? Government. I mean, it's a no-brainer. So, paisa, they must have put in a lot of money. The amount of money put in by Reliance was 380 crores. 380 crores Reliance, 780 crores government and 600 crores worth of land given free. Phukat. How is this done? How is this black magic brought about? It is done by labeling. Simple matter of labeling. 780 crores of government are given two labels. 600 crores is called viability gap funding. To make this project viable, you have to give 600 crores gift. Government's equity is 180 crores. Reliance equity is 380 crores. Therefore, equity is 74% Reliance, 26% government. And this I am highlighting A, to show what is the issue of a public authority. B, to bring before you the fact that from my perception, India is not weak, Indians are not poor. But a lot of Indian assets and money is being gifted away to various people and are being made into private property and private wealth. This is actually citizens' money, citizens' wealth being given away. Of course, in this case, when I brought this up, they agreed to give information, they accepted because they realized that if it was taken much further, it would create a big stink and people would raise questions. What is right to information? Right to information means the right to information accessible under this Act, which is held by or under the control of any public authority and includes the right to inspection of work, documents, records. You can inspect records, you can inspect work also. For example, if you were to ask about, supposing there are potholes on a particular road. If you ask BMC, how many potholes are there? They may say, no, there are no potholes, because on their record there would be no potholes. But what you can do is you can ask for inspection on the road, inspection of work. Take an inspection, photograph the potholes, make notes of that with a municipal officer and bring it on government record. You can also inspect building. A young boy, 20-year-old chap called Krishna Gupta in Veera Bhayandar, he came up with a new idea. He said, I want to inspect a public hospital. So he went to the government hospital, got a list of costly equipments that were there, discovered that some of the equipment didn't exist, discovered that some of the equipment had not been opened. And consequent to that, I am told improvements are occurring in that hospital. Taking notes, extracts or certified copies of documents or records, that is what is generally most commonly done. You take photocopies of records, you take extracts from that or notes from that or information from that. Taking certified samples of material. You can also take samples of material. For example, if you think a government hospital is using substandard drugs or fake drugs, you can take samples and get them tested. If you believe concrete work is going on, which is of poor quantity, you can take a sample, get it tested. This is limited only by your imagination and how much you exercise this. Obtaining information in the form of diskettes, floppies, etc. CCTV footage is also included. That is also yours by right. And lots of things, now that we've got CCTV cameras in lots of places, you can uncover, you can bring about changes and ask for different ways to be done. The most important is section 3, which is the shortest. Subject to the provisions of this act, all citizens shall have the right to information. Who can have the right to information? All citizens of India. The moment a child is born in India, he or she is a citizen of India. And there are young kids of 9 and 10 who use right to information fairly intelligently and fairly well incidentally. Can any information be denied? What do you think? Can confidential information be given? No. This law does not recognize anything like confidential information or sensitive information. It recognizes exactly 10 categories of information which can be denied, which is given in section 8.1. We'll deal with that. Apart from which, section 9 is the only one by which material can be exempted, which covers copyright. Supposing you ask the censor board and say, I want a DVD of any film. They will not give it to you because it is infringing on somebody's copyright. If you ask for a copy of a book which may be in a government library, it cannot be given to you because it may infringe somebody's copyright. But apart from that, only section 8.1, and there is nothing like confidentiality. It is done because exemptions are given in Right to Information Acts because it is believed that certain harm will come to certain interests that need to be protected. Apart from that, all the information belongs to you. The default mode is information is mine and I must therefore get access to it. We will check a little whether I am able to properly explain or not. So we'll just run through this. Tell me whether you think these are information seeking applications. If I apply for a water connection, will it be granted to me? Is it a fair question? Is it a fair query in RTI? Yes or no? No, that's right. Because there is nothing on record. If I apply, what will happen? Once I apply, whatever happens is then on record. Why does Swami Vivekananda Road have many potholes? Absolutely right. Can a sample be taken from government go down?
Yes.
Good. Can you file an RTI application with Nirav Modi's companies? No. That's right. Can you file an RTI application with an aided school?
Yes.
Wonderful. Now you know 25% of RTI that I know. Now, section 4 is called the heart of the RTI Act, but is not really followed as well as it should. Every public authority shall maintain all its records duly catalogued and indexed in a manner and form which facilitates the right to information under this Act, and ensure that all records that are appropriate to be computerized are within a reasonable time and subject to availability of resources, computerized and connected through a network all over the country on different systems so that access to such records is possible. 14 years since the law was made. Computerization, and I'd like to focus a little bit on that for a few seconds. It's a common experience when a citizen goes to a government office seeking some information about his application or complaint or representation. He or she will be told, file bhet at nahi. Right? We can't find the file. If you give 100 rupees, the file will be found. If you give 200 rupees, the record may be changed. If you give 500 rupees, the record may be changed or removed. Give 1,000 rupees, the whole file can be made to disappear. And for a few thousand rupees more, there will be a fire in Mantralaya. What is the sanctity of these records? These are all paper records. The promise was computerization and network. We have networks, we have computers in all government offices. Most government offices use computers as electric typewriters, not really as computers. Let me describe a simple thing to you. Supposing a file originates in the BMC office in Borivali and has to come to the head office, it has to physically travel from there to the head office. From the head office, let's assume it has to go to Mantralaya. It has to physically be taken to Mantralaya. And let's assume it has to go to the Environment Ministry in the center. It will have to physically travel. Can you think of a more inefficient way of working? If an enemy country was asked to design our governmental working, they couldn't have done better. And here, we have computers everywhere, we don't work on paperless modes. A simple thing, if this was done electronically from Borivali to municipal office to the Mantralaya to the central government, it could all be over in less than an hour. Right now it takes weeks. It takes weeks and weeks, otherwise special couriers are sent with the file. So you send a man, he goes by a special courier, by a special plane, etc. And that's how the work is done. If all computerized dealing was there and there were no papers in the government, 30% of India's corruption would go down. Forget Lokpal. 30% of India's corruption would go down and the backup could be in a different city. For everything done in Mumbai, the backup could have been in Hyderabad or Bangalore. And you don't use paper files but only do it through the computerized files. We have all the technology, everything. Railways in fact have used this. But even for the official work, they don't use this. They've done computerization beautifully. But for most official work, we depend on paper files, which can be tampered with, which can be changed, which can be destroyed. Everything can happen to it. Whereas the electronic file, if you change it, it can be discovered who changed it, when, and what it was before. The amount of security available on this is huge. And thousands of crores of rupees are spent by government on paper on the paper files and the gatta on which the files are tied. A comparable amount is spent to keep those files. And a comparable amount is spent to locate those files, because quite often these files cannot be found. Now the law, fair enough, I have a right to information, but who do I ask in a government office? The law says every public authority, every officer of public authority must appoint a public information officer. And how do I find out the name of the public information officer? I don't need to. I can address it to the public information officer at the address of a public authority where I believe the information is likely to be. So I apply there. There is no name required, there has to be a public information officer in every office. For example, if I want to write to the principal of St. Xavier's College, I don't need to know the name of the principal. I can say principal, St. Xavier's College, it will reach. If the principal is not there, there will be an acting principal. So similarly, you write to the public information officer and there has to be somebody who will respond to you. What happens if the information is not available in that office? Or it is available with a different authority? Can he give it back to you? The answer is no. You are the ruler of this nation. The public information officer within 5 days must transfer it to the right public information officer in office, because it is his responsibility. He cannot tell you, mere paas nahi hai, tum jao. He cannot do that. Remember, you are the ruler of this nation. He can take the assistance. He may not have all the information with him. He can take assistance from some other officer and the liability would transfer to whichever officer he tries to get information from. A person who desires to obtain any information under this Act shall make a request in writing or through electronic means in English, Hindi or the official language of the area. In Maharashtra it would be Marathi. There is no way you can say, I want a response in the language that I want. You will get a response in any one of these three languages, just as you can apply in any of these three languages. In Maharashtra, most state government responses will be in Marathi. An applicant making request for information shall not be required to give any reason for requesting the information or any other personal details except those that may be necessary for contacting him. Now, this is part of the law, but I've often wondered, is this reasonable? Without any reason, just to harass government people, is this fair? Is this right? What do you think? I wondered. I'm taking the mood of the house. Is it okay for citizens to ask for information without any reason? Yes. Why? Harassing people. Yes. We have the right to information. Article 19(1)(a) gives me freedom of speech and expression, which includes freedom to speak, to sing no matter how badly I sing, to vote, to publish, and right to information. And I don't need to give reasons for any. If somebody says I have to give reasons for seeking information, believe it or not, there are very senior people who have said this, that this is bad. Prime ministers have said this. The former Prime Minister said, people ask for information in a frivolous manner. Supreme Court judges have said, people ask for information, they must give reasons why they want information. This concept of it being a fundamental right, if we are asked to give reasons for seeking information, tomorrow we'll be asked to give reasons for speaking. You will be told why you want to speak, please first justify. You will be asked to go through a censor to publish anything. Therefore, anybody saying you need reasons is being fastidious and is not understanding the concept of what a democracy is and what right to information is. Well, which is what I told you, if you apply to another public information officer where your information is not there but it's in another office, this must be transferred within 5 days time. The information has to provide within 30 calendar days. How do the 30 calendar days work? Let me explain to you. There is an application fee of 10 rupees. For Maharashtra state government, the most convenient way of paying the application fee is by taking a court fee stamp and sticking it on the paper. For central government, the court fee stamp won't work. You buy an Indian postal order of 10 rupees and attach it to your application, that's your application fee. If information has to be provided you, supposing you have to be provided 200 pages of information, or you ask for a complete copy of a file, and supposing it's 200 pages, they can charge you 2 rupees per page. Therefore, they would send you a letter saying pay 400 rupees. The moment the letter is sent, the 30-day clock stops. When you pay the fee, the 30-day clock starts again. So supposing after 10 days, the PIO sends you a letter saying please pay so much, it may take you 3-4 days, clock is 0. After that, you may pay after 6 days, clock is still 0. The moment you pay, the clock starts again and the PIO has another 20 days to give you the information. If information is given after 30 days, then the consequences are A, information has to be given to you without any additional charge. Even if it is 1,000 pages, they cannot charge you 2,000 rupees, they have to give you the information free of cost. And yes, there is a penalty provision on the public information officer, which we'll deal with a little later. When a request has been rejected under subsection 1, the PIO shall communicate to the person making the request the reasons for such rejection. They have to give reasons and they can't just say 81A, B, C. They must give you some reasoning as to how that rejection applies to the information that you are seeking. The period within which an appeal against such rejection may be preferred, which is 30 days. If the PIO does not give you a satisfactory response or gives you no response, you can file a first appeal to a first appellate authority who is an officer senior in rank to the public information officer. How do I know who the first appellate authority is? The law requires the PIO to inform you who the first appellate authority is in responding. What happens if he doesn't respond to me or doesn't give me the information when responding to me? A simple technique is to file a first appeal with the first appellate authority, care of public information officer in the same interest. And in that right, that the law requires you to give me the information about the first appellate authority. Since you have not done this, you are now required to give it to the first appellate authority. 30-day period, I just wanted to reiterate, PIO receives RTI application day 1. After X days, PIO sends letter asking additional fees, 30-day clock stops. Additional fees paid, 30-day clock starts again. Information sent after Y days, X plus Y less than or equal to 30 days. In case of a transfer, information must be provided in 35 days, since 5 days are allowed for the transfer. Let's run a small thing through. If the true or false, if the information is a different PIO, the RTI application can be returned. Reasons have to be given for seeking information. Loud and clear, you are the rulers of this nation. PIO must respond in language which the applicant wants. If information is confidential, it will not be given. False. There can be nothing like confidential information. The concept of confidential information, sensitive information has disappeared. Information may not be given to you if it falls in the exemptions of Section 8.1, and the exemptions of Section 8.1 are not based on confidentiality. They are based on some harm which might occur to certain interests that need to be protected. An NGO is eligible to seek information in RTI. False. Only citizens are eligible. So, a member of an NGO can, a member of an institution can, but an individual citizen has to apply for it. Institutions, NGOs, organizations do not have the right to information. PIO in domain rupees 100 for providing 50 pages of information 40 days after receiving the RTI application. Great. Now, I mentioned that earlier, but I'd like to remind you all, this is very important to understand. RTI is a fundamental right of citizens under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, which guarantees freedom of speech and expression. Once I have a fundamental right, why can it be denied to me? The denial has to come through a constitutional provision only. Denial cannot be because somebody thinks nahi dena hai. The constitutional provision is Article 19(2), which says permissible restrictions are given in Article 19(2), which permits reasonable restrictions in the interest of the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security of the state, friendly relations with foreign state, public order, decency or morality, or in relation to contempt of court, defamation or incitement to an offence. Only based on these can some information be denied, and that has been codified in Section 8.1 of the law. RTI's Section 8.1 covers these, trying to place some of the reasonable restrictions on this. Army is in RTI. So supposing you said, I want information about the army formations or the armaments with the army, that information would be denied to you because it would fall under Section 8.1(a). Notwithstanding anything contained in this Act, there shall be no obligation to give any citizen information, disclosure of which would prejudicially affect the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security, strategic, scientific or economic interests of the state, relation with foreign state, or lead to incitement of an offence. For example, if information of correspondence between, say, US and India was to be disclosed, we could not do international relations at all. So these are denied based on a concept that it might harm the certain interests which need to be protected. Information which has been expressly forbidden to be published by any court of law or tribunal, or the disclosure of which may constitute contempt of court. Are you all familiar with the concept of sub judice? Are you familiar with the concept of sub judice? Okay, sub judice is matters that are in court. Normally, most things, a lot of people will say this is sub judice, it will not be given to you. This law does not say this. It says expressly forbidden. So some judge should have said this information shall not be released. Otherwise, sub judice cannot be a ground for refusal of information. Information, the disclosure of which would cause a breach of privilege of Parliament or the state legislature. What kind of information would this be? For example, before the budget is presented, if you ask for information regarding the budget papers, it could not be given to you because it has to be first presented to Parliament or state legislature. Commissions of inquiry. The reports have to be first, as per the Commissions of Inquiry Act, the report is supposed to be made in 6 months. And within 6 months of the placing of the report, it must be laid on the house of the legislature or Parliament. Quite often, governments don't do this. They just keep it away if the report is uncomfortable for them. Have you all heard of the Adarsh Commission, Adarsh Ghotala? Yes, everybody has heard of Ghotalas. There was a lot of furor, so therefore the government appointed an inquiry commission. The inquiry commission took 2 years and gave a report. The report mentioned names of former chief ministers, other ministers and senior officials. Therefore the government did not want to reveal it. They put it in the cupboard and forgot all about it. After 7 months, I filed an RTI application asking for a copy of the Adarsh Commission report. The PR denied, saying, "No, this is not placed in the House of Legislature, so we can't give it to you because it is a breach of privilege of legislature." I argued that within 6 months, you are supposed to place it before the legislature. You have not done that, therefore you already breached the privilege of the legislature, now you can't deny it to me. The matter went to the commission in second appeal, and what the government did was a smart move. They realized they had an untenable stand. So they placed the report on the floor of the legislature and sent me the copy. All Commission of Inquiry reports can now be obtained by citizens, and the government cannot refuse to give it, saying it's confidential. Quite often that's what they say, confidential. Tell them there is nothing like confidential information. I own the information. Information including commercial confidence secrets, trade secrets or intellectual property, the disclosure of which would harm the competitive position of a third party. There is a larger public interest clause which we'll deal with later. I'll explain that. Supposing you ask FDA for the formulation of Coca-Cola, it cannot be given to you because it would harm, it is of a nature of commercial confidence, and giving it would harm their competitive interest. But both conditions have to be satisfied. Only a matter being commercial confidence will not entitle it to an exemption. For an example, amongst what we call government-owned entities, Air India can claim this exemption for information relating to its commercial affairs. Bank of India can also claim this, but Indian Railways cannot because they have no competition. Only somebody in a competitive position can do this. If once a tender has been given, this exemption cannot be claimed because there is no question of harming anybody's competitive interest. Before the tender is given, this exemption could be claimed. Information available to a person is fiduciary relationship. Do you all know what is fiduciary relationship?
It's a trust, a relation based on trust between two.
Trust. All of us have trust that nobody is going to pick up the gun and start shooting. Right? Are we in a fiduciary relationship? No. You are right. Trust is one element. Quite often, the truth is most citizens don't know what is fiduciary. Most government servants also don't know what is fiduciary. So very often, when there is information they don't want to give, they will say fiduciary. And the average citizen thinks, "Kuch bada bada word hai, kuch hoga." What fiduciary means is, the traditional fiduciary relationships are doctor-patient, banker-customer, a father and somebody who confesses before him. That's also a fiduciary relationship. What are the characteristics of these relationships? Somebody goes and gives information to somebody with superior knowledge, expecting him to use that information for his or her benefit. I go to a doctor and give information about myself, or a lawyer and give information regarding myself for my benefit. And that person is legitimately only supposed to act in my benefit. He or she is not permitted to disclose this information to anybody, but information that he or she gives me, or advice that they give me, I am free to discuss with anyone I like. So fiduciary is a one-way relationship. And yes, I have a choice of who to go to. I can choose my doctor, I can choose my lawyer. Also, there is no law which forbids me from lying before them. I can go to a lawyer and say, "I never committed the crime," though I actually may have committed the crime and I have not committed any illegality. But most information with the government is not held in a fiduciary relationship because it's not a matter of trust. It's not whether I trust him or not, I have to give it. It's a regulatory affair. It's by law, I'm compulsively supposed to give that information. And therefore, most information with government is not held in a fiduciary capacity. But for example, if I go to a government hospital, information regarding my body and my health is being held by them in a fiduciary capacity. If I have an account in State Bank of India, you can't say, "I want Mr. Gandhi's details of account," because that is being held by State Bank in a fiduciary relationship. So just understand that fiduciary relationship has limitations. But lots of government offices, either because they don't understand or they say, ट्रस्ट है ना, they bring it down to just one. So they say सरकार पे ट्रस्ट है, तो किसी ने भी कुछ भी इंफॉर्मेशन दिया. It's not just trust. Information received in confidence from foreign government. This is the only place where the word confidence or confidentiality has been used in the exemptions. If information has been given by a foreign government, and the PIO says this was given in confidence, it cannot be released. For example, the Rafale deal information is sought to be exempt because they claim that this was given by the French government in confidence. But information given by a private company in confidence will not fall in this. It is only if the government has given it. Information, the disclosure of which would endanger the life or physical safety of any person or identify the source of information or assistance given in confidence for law enforcement or security purposes. For example, if you complained about something and somebody asked for information regarding that, it might endanger somebody's life or physical safety and therefore the information would not be given to it. Information which would impede the process of investigation or apprehension or prosecution of offenders. Based on this, when an investigation is ongoing, can information be provided? Yes or no?
Yes. Unless it's stated by the judge or the court.
No, this is not judge. We had investigation, miss. The judge ki baat nahi. Information which would impede the process of investigation or apprehension or prosecution of offenders. Yes? The truth is, carefully read this. We are conditioning our minds in terms of what we believe is kaisa hona chahiye. This law says impede the process of investigation. It did not say when an investigation is ongoing, information can be denied. Very often, this is a common thing where people say wherever an investigation is going on, and sometimes investigations go on for 10 years, 20 years, they never get finished. And this is normally used to deny information. Because an investigation is ongoing, information cannot be denied. Only if it can be shown that giving the information will impede the process of investigation. 70% of the times people who are asking for details of the investigation are the complainants. And they will refuse saying, actually they have done nothing, so they will just say, nahi dega. It's wrong. Argue that, look, if I am a complainant, it's silly to say that I will impede the investigation. It is highly, highly unlikely, it's daydreaming. It's complete nonsense to say that the complainant will actually want to impede the process of investigation. 70% of the applications are refused like this, saying, no, investigation is ongoing. That is not a reason for denial of information. Cabinet papers, including records of deliberations of the councils of ministers, secretaries and the other officers, provided that the decisions of councils of ministers, the reasons thereof and the material on the basis of which the decisions were taken, shall be made public after the decision has been taken, the matter is complete or over. This is a very unique thing which is worth paying attention to. Up to a certain point, information of cabinet papers is exempt until a decision is taken. Once a decision is taken, the law requires that they must suo motu declare the information and share it with people. For example, if a bill is presented in Parliament, let's take the bill presented yesterday. This law requires that they must place all the material based on which they took these decisions. This is a rush matter, but in a proper democracy, bills should be presented first, they should be put into public domain. Afterwards, they must give reasons why they are bringing this bill. Citizens must get a chance to discuss it, to debate it, to point out objections, to point out flaws. And after that, a bill should be passed by Parliament. Parliament is not a rubber stamp, it's not meant to be a rubber stamp. But, and I'm not talking of any political party, earlier government as well as this government have been guilty of this. They bring up a bill and just pass it through. Even if they bring up a bill and pass it through, you have a right to ask for the reasons and the cabinet note based on when these decisions were taken. 81J is the most popular RTI exemption. It says, information which relates to personal information, the disclosure of which has no relationship to any public activity or interest, or which would cause unwarranted invasion of the privacy of the individual. Unless the PIs, forget the larger public interest part, but there is a specific proviso to this. provided that the information which cannot be denied to Parliament or a state legislature shall not be denied to any person. Personal information, your name is personal. My age is personal. Everything is personal. Anything relating to a person is personal. You write a paper, it's personal. Okay. But the law does not say personal information should be denied. The law goes further and says personal information which has no relationship to any public activity or interest. Most information in public records is a consequence of public activity. It's a public activity, it's not a private activity. If I write a letter to my wife, that's a private activity. But when I write a letter to a government, it's a public activity. When I file a return with government, it's a public activity. When I apply for a passport, it's a public activity. And yet there is some confusion on that. Some people argue both ways. Let's deal with that. Or which would cause unwarranted invasion of the privacy of the individual. Now here's the big whammy. What is privacy? Good, you are all very reticent. You are in line with 9 judges of the Supreme Court who 2 years back gave a decision in what's called the Puttaswamy judgment. In the Puttaswamy judgment, 9 judge bench sat, deliberated, and gave a 547-page judgment saying that privacy is a fundamental right of citizens. Good. They did not say what is privacy. So you have a fundamental right, you don't know what that fundamental right is. Out of 547 pages, they would have spent at least 5 pages to say what rough domain of privacy is. What they have said is, it will develop on a case-to-case basis. Abhi kaise malum padega? My Supreme Court judges, 9 judges bench cannot decide what is privacy. How is a poor public information officer to decide what is privacy? We were aware of this when drafting the law. This discussion was there, that how will a poor public information officer decide? So we came up with a very simple test, acid test. We said, provided that the information which cannot be denied to Parliament or state legislature shall not be denied to any person. This proviso was put only for this. Government officers are used to providing information to Parliament and state legislature. They are not used to providing it to citizens. A citizen's right to information is as much as the member of Parliament's. B, the whole concept of exemptions is that certain harm may occur, therefore information shall not be given to the citizen. If information is given to Parliament, it will be public knowledge. Therefore, if it is likely to harm somebody in an unacceptable manner, then it should not be given to Member of Parliament also. And there have been Supreme Court judgments earlier which said privacy is to do with things that you do in your own house, things to do with sexual preferences, if somebody gets raped and events like that. Which, if I go back, only permissible restrictions are given in Article 19(2). Out of these words, let's just go through it. What do you think can relate to privacy? My constitution says on what grounds you can derive the information. In the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India, will issues of privacy affect the sovereignty and integrity of India? The security of the state? Friendly relations with America? Public order? Decency or morality? The answer is yes, decency or morality is likely to be impacted. So therefore, in the interest of decency or morality, you can deny. But only in the interest of decency or morality, everything does not become privacy. This is a good test for, and if something would violate decency or morality, information should not be provided to Parliament also. That was the reason for providing that proviso, which many people are forgetting completely. Notwithstanding anything in the Official Secrets Act, nor any of the exemptions permissible in accordance with subsection 1, a public authority may allow access to information if public interest in disclosure outweighs the harm to the protected interest. If an exemption applies, then only is the issue of larger public interest. If an exemption doesn't apply, you don't need to show any public interest. But if an exemption applies, you can still argue that there is a larger public interest in disclosure. For example, the Nirav Modi company example I gave you, you could argue that a major fraud has been committed on citizens, and therefore there's a larger public interest in disclosing this. It's a possibility you could get it. But larger public interest is required only when an exemption applies, not otherwise. Okay, we'll do a small test basically this is not a test for you, it's a test for whether I am able to explain things properly. If a matter is sub judice, information shall not be provided regarding it. True or false? No commercial information shall be provided. Great. Confidential information shall not be provided. A PIO can reject the RTI application without giving any reason. An applicant must give reasons for seeking information. All personal information is exempted. That's right. Appeal. First appeal to first appellate authority within 30 days. If a PIO rejects your application or does not give you the information or refuses or charges too high, you can file a first appeal to the first appellate authority. But this must be done within 30 days. That's the time period. For not getting information, incomplete information or wrong information. Wrong information is information which is not as per the record. It is not whether it is physically existing or not. We must understand this very carefully and clearly. First appellate authority should decide in 30 days, he can take another 15 days, so up to 45 days. If result of first appeal not satisfactory, file second appeal to the commission within 90 days. Onus on PIO that denial of information was justified. The way the law has been drafted, you do not need to justify why you need information. The PIO has to justify why denied information based on the provisions of the law only. Section 20 is the teeth of the Act. This is the reason why the Act works, otherwise it wouldn't have worked. If information denied without reasonable cause, Commission must penalize the PIO at Rs 250 per day of delay after giving an opportunity of explaining. Maximum penalty Rs 25,000. Commission can also recommend disciplinary action against the officer and compensation to be paid to appellant. This is the teeth. Without this Act would have been useless. This recognizes the sovereignty of the individual citizen. If a major catastrophe hits Mumbai and 100,000 of us collect in Azam Maidan, the maximum that will happen to a public servant is he or she may get transferred. Here is a law that says, one individual citizen, one, sitting in a small hut, a girl of 15 maybe, sends a RTI requisition saying, I want this information from my government, my information that belongs to me. And if her right is not respected without any reasonable cause, the public official will have to pay a penalty up to 25,000 rupees. Penalties are imposed, not as much as they should be, but they are. To give an example, I had imposed penalties on 520 officers, totaling to 98 lakh rupees in my period. And this is the teeth of the Act. This is what makes the law work. This is what scares the public servant, because individually he or she has to shell out money from his salary. The provisions of this Act shall have effect notwithstanding anything inconsistent therewith contained in the Official Secrets Act and any other law for the time being in force, or in any instrument having effect by virtue of any other law than this Act. When information is sought, the only Act that has to be applied is the RTI Act. In most legal issues, the thing becomes, no, in this Act it is like this, in this Act it is like this is a precedent. All of that notwithstanding. In the RTI Act, when I apply in RTI, I have a right to get the information based only on the RTI Act. Information can be refused only based on Section 8 and 9. Effectively, if it's not an issue of copyright, 10 exemptions of Section 8(1) are the only ones that apply. If the exemption applies, I can still prove a larger public interest in disclosure, information could still be given. RTI application, information in 30 days. If no information provided or unsatisfactory information, first appeal to be filed within 30 days of response or 60 days in case of no response. First appellate authority, hearing order within 45 days. If unsatisfactory order or no response, second appeal to commission within 90 days, which is the final appellate authority. Now here, let me also highlight the present amendments that have been proposed by the government. I guess some of you would have heard of it. The information commissions have been put at a fairly high position in the law. The Central Information Commission, of which I was a part, is equal to the Central Election Commissioners, who are equal to the Supreme Court judges. So that's the highest public position you can get. What is the reason for this? It's fascinating. The first bill of the RTI Act was presented by the UPA government to Parliament in December 2004. A lot of us were also involved in negotiations with this government about this. This is one of those laws that had a certain amount of public consultation. That bill had various flaws. They had proposed that the Central Information Commissioner should be equal to Joint Secretaries to the Government of India. When this was referred to the Parliament, it was presented to Parliament, Parliament said there should be a parliamentary standing committee that must go into the provisions of this law, since it has a deep impact. It was referred to a parliamentary committee on 31st December 2004. February and March 2005, 6 meetings of the parliamentary committee were held. There were 6 to 8 BJP members. I am talking of BJP because they are currently the ones who brought the amendment, including the President of India now, Shri Ramnath Kovind. He was also part of that committee. They said, no, if you make him equal to Joint Secretary, their authority will not be adequate. Their autonomy and independence will not be adequate. They will not be able to get their laws enforced because their rules have to be obeyed by even the Supreme Court of India or the President's office or the Prime Minister's office, even other secretaries and so on. So they recommended that these people should be made equal to the election commissions, which is the Supreme Court judges. Only then will they be able to function independently and autonomously. So that was incorporated in the final law, which was passed by Parliament in May 2005. 14 years later, nobody has mentioned that that is any issue. And the tenure of the commissioners is 5 years. But the retirement age is 65, so for example, when I joined, I was 61, so I got a lower tenure than 5 years. But that's and they can't be touched, they can't be removed unless there's a long process. This government has amended only this part of the law and said that we want that the central government will decide. Right now it's in law. What is the position of the commissioners? For state commissioners, the position is equal to cabinet secretary. So this is provided in the law. So therefore their salaries, their perquisites, their authority, everything flows from the law made by Parliament. Government has said, no, we want to decide. For states as well as for the central government. Why? Now the only reasons which make some sense, it's actually nonsense, but anyway, it makes some sense. One is what's given in the statement of objects in the bill itself. They have said that the election commissioners, the election commission is a constitutional body, information commission is statutory bodies. Anything that was envisaged in the Constitution of India was made are constitutional authorities. A police constable is also mentioned, therefore a police constable is a constitutional authority. By subsequent laws, various agencies were created. Most of them are statutory authorities, but they have the same force as that in law, and they are expected to find out what the law is and implement it. The Election Commission safeguards the citizens' fundamental right to vote. The Information Commissions ensure that the citizens' right to information is safeguarded, in theory at least. So therefore, this whole thing of constitutional and statutory authorities is fake. It's not the reason. The other reason given by the minister in the Parliament, he said Information Commission's decisions can be challenged in a High Court. So implying how can they be higher than the High Court? Now this is a flawed thing. As per the law, no appeal against the Information Commission's order is permitted before a court. That's the final appellate authority. However, High Courts and Supreme Court have what's called writ jurisdiction, WRIT, in which they entertain challenges to the Commission's orders. By this logic, writ jurisdiction is exercised against orders of the President and governors also. So I don't know whether they are saying that we'll degrade them also to level of High Court or maybe subordinate courts. The President of India will have to be. So the reasons are obviously wrong. The only reason appears to be they want to control the information commissioners by saying we will decide your salary, we will decide your tenure. Theoretically, the way the amendment has been brought, they could have a tenure of 1 month for the commissioner. Every month I'll see तुम मेरे favor में decision देता है कि नहीं. And this is because some of the decisions, the truth is, most of the information commissioners today are selected by all information commissioners are selected by government. Most of them are beholden to the government, and therefore the thinking is like that of the government officers only, and they are happy to do what the government wants them to do. But there are a few commissioners who act independently and give independent orders, and that is not liked. But to put this in perspective, the earlier government also thrice tried to amend the law, but they did not because of citizens' objections. They listened to citizens. This government also wanted to bring this out in 2018. But at that time, the elections were coming close, people protested and they heard us. Now, they seem to feel they have a great majority and they have rushed it through. It's law. Citizens' movements are trying to oppose that and saying that we need to oppose a law that is wrong and takes away from my fundamental rights, weakens my fundamental rights. Okay, let's run this fourth one. If the PR refuses to give the information, the applicant must file an appeal with the Information Commission. No. First appeal. The second appeal lies with the Information Commission. Information which is not to be displayed as per the Evidence Act or Supreme Court rules shall not be given. Yes or no? What takes supremacy? Other acts or rules or RTI Act?
It's false.
False. RTI application was filed on 1st January and was rejected on 10th January. The first appeal can be filed on 25th February. False. It should be filed within 30 days. The form for filing an RTI application must be obtained from a government office. No form needs to be obtained anywhere. Any plain piece of paper is your form. For Maharashtra government, take a plain piece of paper, put a 10 rupee court fee stamp. You can make your application handwritten, computer generated or typewritten. And that's the valid application. Maharashtra government has a format. The central government has no format. Maharashtra government has a format which needs to be followed, and I'll show you the format also. This is a format. This is in 2 slides, but this story also I'd like to share with you. This was a young boy from Bihar, age 21, who came to Mumbai looking for a job. He stayed in a hut with his chacha and was going around looking for contacts, relatives, friends, and saying, can we find a job? There's an RTI workshop like this going on in the Basti. So he sat down, understood that he can take any plain piece of paper, understood what is information. Information is what is on record. It's not right to interrogation. Understood that all he needs to do is put a 10 rupee court fee stamp, that he must file an application with the public information officer of an office where he believes the information is. Having understood all this, he moved on. He got a job, and then he needed what everyone does before the Aadhaar card, proof of identity, a ration card. So this boy went to the rationing office, gave his application, and as he was walking out of the door, the peon met him and said, "Do you want your ration card? तुम्हें ration card चाहिए क्या?" He said, "हाँ भाई, इसीलिए तो फॉर्म भरे." The peon said, "चाय पानी लगेगा." This boy said, "ठीक है, आपको चाय पिला दूंगा." The peon said, "चाय पानी का मतलब चाय पिलाना नहीं होता है." तो he said, "फिर क्या मतलब होता है?" He said, 2000 रुपए देने पड़ेंगे तब तुम्हारा राशन कार्ड बनेगा. And this boy, without batting an eyelid, made a statement that always makes me feel very proud. He said, "मैं घूस नहीं दूंगा. I shall not give a bribe." The peon shrugged. Chap, stupid chap coming from Lalu Yadav state, अकल तो है नहीं, इसको इस जर्मन में राशन कार्ड नहीं मिलेगा. This boy went back. He found out from people in the Basti, people were paying bribes and getting their ration cards in about 40-45 days. He waited 3 months. After 3 months, he filed this RT application. He done it in Hindi. I have translated it into English. These are the standard matters. What is the information? I had given an application for a ration card on 5th August 2006 photocopy of receipt attached. I want the following information. One, now what he wanted to know is मेरा राशन कार्ड क्यों नहीं मिला, but he didn't ask that. There was no record कि इसने चाय पानी नहीं दिया इसलिए इसको राशन कार्ड नहीं मिला, ऐसा record तो नहीं होगा. So he said progress of application giving which officer had my application, on which date, to whom did he forward it on which date. This will include the notings and comments of the officers. Attested photocopies of all letters and notings will be provided. It should be there. There is a record. He's filed an application for a ration card. 2. I want a list of ration cards issued in the last 3 months, giving the dates on which the applications were made and the dates on which the ration cards were issued. Both these things are things that have to be on record. Now you can well imagine that what would they say? Application तो एक ही टेबल पे रहा because आगे गया ही नहीं, चाय पानी नहीं दिया था. They couldn't say that. And if they had said that it remained on one table, this would be obviously a question of corruption which could be complained against. So the next day that Pune came and told him, he said, आपको साहब ने बुलाया है. So he went there. As he went there, the officer said, अरे इनके लिए कुर्सी लेके आओ. और इनका राशन कार्ड लेके आओ, इनके लिए एक कप चाय और एक गिलास पानी लेके आओ. He did not give chai pani, he got chai pani instead. And to me that one cup of tea was respect for the individual sovereign citizen of this nation. That is what it was. A very poor man establishing his right, getting his right as a sovereign citizen, getting his respect. These kinds of cases have been repeated thousands of times across the nation. Thousands, maybe lakhs of times. The same standard format has been sought. मैंने कंप्लेंट दिया, कंप्लेंट का क्या किया, मैंने एप्लीकेशन दिया, एप्लीकेशन का क्या किया, मैंने रिप्रेजेंटेशन दिया, उसका क्या किया. And this puts pressure to get things done. This is another matter where this is my own RTI application, and this I am highlighting to you to show you how powerful can be the consequences of an RTI application. It doesn't happen every time, but it happens sometimes. On a particular day, this I'll read from the application itself. According to a news report in the Times of India dated 29th April 06, Inspector Prakash Avare was accused of raping a minor in September 2005. He was acquitted by the Sessions Court in February and has been reinstated in service. I want a photocopy of the order reinstating him along with the file noting based on which the decision was taken. This particular day, on the front page of Times of India was a photograph of citizens demonstrating at Marine Drive because one police constable More had raped a minor. And the same day on page 5 was this news report of Police Inspector Prakash Avare having been reinstated in service. I felt angry. We all feel angry when we read something like this. This is what I did. I filed an RTI application. I could only see what is on record. Okay. The PIO refused to give the information. This is my first appeal. Facts of the case. Grounds for appeal. I had asked for information regarding the reinstatement of Inspector Prakash Avare as per the attached application. The PIO first sent me a letter stating that the information would be provided by Vaikala police station. PIO Vaikala replied that it was exempt under section 81H, which exempts information which would impede the process of investigation or apprehension of prosecution of offenders. Grounds for appeal. The PIO has not shown how providing the information would impede any investigation. In fact, no investigation is being held since Prakash Avare has been reinstated. The rejection is without any base in law. For an appellate hearing, normally they call you for a hearing. So there was a very good Deputy Commissioner of Police. He said, Mr. Gandhi, what can we do? That time I was not a commissioner, I was just an ordinary citizen. He said, what could we do, Mr. Gandhi? The court has released him. I said, where am I asking you to explain? I am saying, give me a copy of the letter reinstating him and the reasons thereof. From my perspective, if Prakash Avare is guilty of the crime which he has been alleged to have committed, putting him back in the police force is hampering and a big disservice to the nation, to the city, to people. On the other hand, if he is innocent, then someone framed him. If somebody framed him, action should be taken against the person who framed him. This chap could see the argument. He said, let me see what I can do, Mr. Gandhi. In 20 days, I got it in writing that Police Inspector Prakash Avare was dismissed from service. That is the power of right to information that any one individual citizen can exercise from anywhere. Does it happen every time? No, it doesn't happen every time. But this has happened. And there are various instances like this of corrections happening. There are good officers, but they need some support from citizens. You can support them through using right to information. Making an RT application doesn't take more than half an hour. While you are thinking, a survey of mine shows that all Indians crib for 3 to 6 hours every month about what is wrong. There are potholes on the road, police ऐसा है, वो ऐसा करता है, minister ऐसा करता है. Former Prime Minister never used to speak and this Prime Minister keeps giving his man ki baat all the time. Does that cribbing change anything? Can it change anything? It can change nothing. Why do we do it? Perhaps it's good for our mental and physical health. Good time pass. My submission is, continue cribbing. Out of that 2 hours in a month, decide that you will use for the nation. Decide that you will use to better the country. Half an hour, 1 RT application. 1.5 hours, sit with your friends and discuss or apply yourself or read up something on the Google, wherever. Why does my government not function well? What can I do? What can be done to change the governance structure? Suggest improvements, think about it, discuss with it. If enough of us start doing it, does every RT application result in any result? The answer is no. I'd be lying if I said that. In my opinion, rough indicator is in about 30% of the cases, 1/3 of the cases. Sometimes they may not even give you information, but some small change in the governance structure occurs. If they have done something wrong, they may block the information, but they start saying next time around, let's not do this because this will bring us to trouble. Here's a simple dream I want to share with you. If 30 lakh Indian citizens, 30 lakh, that's not a big figure. Take a vow. Once a month, we'll file 1 RT application about a matter that we are cribbing about to bring improvement in the system. Will I get information? Will I not? Will things change? Don't worry about it. Do it just as a mechanical kind of exercise, saying, I'll do this, something will change. At one place, one old man like me got up from the audience and said, Mr. Gandhi, मैंने बहुत किया, 2 साल किया RT application, कुछ हुआ नहीं, इंडिया में कुछ होने वाला ही नहीं है, कुछ नहीं होता है, कुछ बदलेगा नहीं, ये सब भ्रष्ट है, ये सिस्टम चेंज करो, लीडर्स चेंज करो, पॉलिटिशियंस को फेंक दो, कोर्ट्स को फेंक दो, तभी कुछ होएगा. To them I say, a lot of us go to mandirs, masjids, gurudwaras, churches, agyaris, wherever. Once a day, once a week, maybe once a month or once a year. When you go there and come out, do we have an extra 100 rupee in our wallet? No. Do you think you become more beautiful without going to the beauty salon? Do you think you become more attractive, more intelligent? You will get 10 marks more in your exam? Nothing like that. Why do we do it? We do it as an act of faith. We have faith that by doing this, something good will happen for me, my society, my family, my nation. What do we do for the nation as an act of faith? Anna. Let's try this as an act of faith for the nation, not worrying about the result. Say, and when we go to a mandir, masjid, etc., we can't see a logical connection. We do it purely as an act of faith, which is good. Here you can see some logical connection that yes, if I file an RT application, if I do something to think about the nation, maybe something can happen. Will it necessarily happen? Not necessarily. But if enough of us do it, even individually, without getting together, you don't need to get together. You can file an RT application independently on a matter that concerns you and pursue that if you like. Pursue another matter. Do it the way you like. But do it. It's a simple, lazy way of doing things. In my opinion, Indian citizens have become more lazy. We blame our political leaders. We expect some messiah to come from somewhere and change things. No messiah will come. It's the citizens of India, the Badshahs and Begums of India who have to do something and who must do something. There's a lot of talk of nationalism. झंडे के सामने खड़े रहो, जन गण मन गाओ, raise the slogan. All these are useful symbols. I'm not saying don't do them. Useful, good. But they're symbols. They won't change anything. If the whole nation decided that from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening, we will stand before the flag and sing Jana Gana Mana and say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, will anything change? Nothing will change. I'm saying these are useful symbols, do them. But let's do something a little more meaningful also. Something that I would submit, is a sure sign of patriotism. Is actual patriotism, meaningful patriotism. I'm not saying the whole time keep thinking of India. Exercise your rights. Exercise your rights to make the government accountable, transparent, to make it change things that are wrong, to improve its systems. If we do that, we can really bring a change. Okay, this is a summary. I'm requesting the organizers to send this to all the participants by email, this presentation. You can file RTI applications online also, on state government or central government again. I've just given a small summary for this. Now, here's if you will put up with my yapping for another 10 minutes, there's another subject I'd like to bring before you. Is it okay?
Yes.
You've not got to sleep? No. Not so far. Okay. I talked of being concerned about the nation. This is another topic. We have judicial backlogs, huge judicial backlogs. And I got interested in this, basically I was in Right to Information. I met a human rights lawyer who told me this story. He said, there was a young man, young boy of 23. His name was Tukaram. He came from Vidarbha to Mumbai, trying to find a way of making a little more money than he could in Vidarbha. He had a wife and a 1-year-old child who he had left behind, hoping that I'll go to Mumbai, I'll get a better job, I'll get some income, we'll all be able to eat adequately. He slept on the footpath the first night, and his mischance, the police picked him up and put him in prison. He didn't know what was happening to him. He was taken to courts, brought back. He had no clue what was happening. I mean, in the whole rigmarole, bureaucracies, nobody was bothered about him. He wrote a postcard to his wife saying, look, I've been picked up by the police, can you do something? And the wife said, I have no money to even come to Mumbai. 3 years went like this. After 3 years, this human rights lawyer, young lawyer, met him and said, what's the problem? What happened? He explained his problem and said, look, I've done nothing. I don't even know why I'm going to prison and why am I going to courts. This human rights lawyer put the matter before a magistrate who was kind enough to release him. Tukaram went back. When he went back, he found that his child had died and his wife had married a 60-year-old man. Tukaram committed suicide. This is listed as one of the suicides of farmers' suicides in Vidarbha. This happens largely because of delays in our judicial system, and we all accept it. Our judicial system is broke. For the poor, it doesn't deliver by and large. For the rich, it delivers partially. But for the poor, the judicial system doesn't exist. We don't have the rule of law really. And this is because of delays in the judicial system. And we all accepted, said, ऐसा ही होएगा. और कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता है. This is not necessary, and therefore I took up a small exercise saying, how many judges do we need? There are various people have said 3 times the number of judges, 10 times the number of judges, and so on and so forth. So I said, let's calculate with some reasonable method, how many judges do I need to ensure that justice is done in a reasonable time. And this is the analysis of 12 years data on the Supreme Court's website. 12 years. Usual solutions suggested are major judicial reforms. Judges must perform better, no adjournments, change laws, double or triple the number of judges. Chief Justice Thakur, standing on the stage with Narendra Modi, he had tears going down his eyes, and he said, we need 70,000 judges without which we can't do justice to India. At that time, about 23,814 was the sanctioned position of judges. So he was asking for 3 times the number of judges. Except that the problem cannot be solved and will keep growing. One Justice V.V. Rao of Andhra Pradesh High Court said, 320 साल लग जाएंगे backlog clear करने को. So don't even think of clearing the backlog. I mean, ये तो ऐसा ही चलेगा. Without changing anything in the way the courts work, how many judges would be required to clear the incoming cases? The analysis is based on the simple assumption that if 10 judges dispose 10,000 cases in a year, 12 judges will clear 12,000 cases. Approximately, as an average. I'm not saying it's a perfect arithmetic, but that's what it would be. How many judges do I need? What's the calculation? All data taken from Supreme Court's website. Now I discovered one other thing. There are always vacancies in the judiciary. Always. Right now, for the first time, there are 31 judges in the Supreme Court, which is a sanction strength, and the bill has been passed just yesterday to increase that strength by 2 judges. But all along, 1 to 2 judges' positions are vacant, even in the Supreme Court. 31 judges they can't find. Most of the times, this is the vacancy, percentage-wise. Average is 12% over a 12-year period. High Courts of India, the average vacancy is 32%. 1/3 of the sanctioned positions are vacant. And the lower courts is 21%. Why? We are dying for justice. We are saying judiciary is overburdened. Kaisa ho sakta hai? Why are we leaving these positions unmanned? Why are we not selecting adequate people? There is no reason. It is just carelessness. And I said, what would happen if these judges had been kept? Over a 12-year period, the total number of cases instituted was 8.9 lakhs in the Supreme Court, 215.58 lakhs in the High Courts, 2156.38 lakhs, total was 2380.86 lakhs. Divided by 12, the average comes to 198.4 lakh cases a year are instituted in the courts of India. Total cases disposed again I have got, which is 193.7 lakh. Each year, courts of India dispose 193.7 lakh cases. The deficit is only 4.7 lakh on an average over 12-year period. 4.7 lakh cases a year. If I look at about 2 crore cases, 4.7 lakhs is just about 2.5% of the cases are increasing every year. That's small. Notionally, if I have 3% extra judges, backlog will not increase. That is what the result appears to be. Now, increase in pendency over the 12-year period was 4.7 lakh cases per year. Missed disposal, if extra judges had been kept as per the sanction strength, not more than the sanction strength. Missed disposal due to vacancies, 1.21 lakh, 95.4 lakh, 564.71 lakhs, 6 crore 61 lakh cases total. Monthly, annually, average 55.1 lakh cases. 4.7 lakh is my increase of cases per year. 55.1 lakh cases I am missing because I am not employing the total number of judges, which is sanctioned. This was the balance pending. If all these judges had been employed on a pro rata basis, the arithmetic answer would be minus 0.65 lakh cases in Supreme Court, minus 41.42 lakhs in the High Courts, minus 270.58, 2 crore 70 lakh cases. Total would have been minus 3 crore 12 lakh cases. I could have imported cases from other countries. You would have told Pakistan, South Africa, everyone, humko case bhejo tum. You're not doing that. I've been pursuing this. Justice Sri Krishna is one person who's accepted this argument. Right now, Justice Loko just a few days back at one seminar said that if we fill up the sanction positions, the answer will be negative in terms of the number of cases. It's so simple that demand is not being made. There are enough people in India. To say anywhere we can't fill up things because we don't have people is flawed. We send people all over the world and we have people dying for jobs and yet we don't provide them. Most government services, we have vacancies. To give an example, the IAS officers, the sanction strength is about 6,500 officers. The total number of IAS officers present is about 5,000. At every level, whether it's police, whether it's judiciary, I am of course focusing on judiciary, but I am saying why do we have vacancies? Providing employment should be priority 1 for this nation. You can pick up very many other causes like this. I am hoping some of you will pursue this and see how we can bring a change in that. Can we change the public policy? Mera Bharat Mahan. We say this. Tempo पे लिखते हैं, ट्रक पे लिखते हैं, टैक्सी में लिखते हैं, बोलते भी है मेरा भारत महान. But we don't really believe this, do we? Therefore I say, मेरा भारत महान नहीं है. मेरा भारत महान नहीं है, पर ये दोष मेरा है. I, the individual sovereign citizen of this nation, am responsible individually. And if each one of you starts believing that, if 30 lakh Indian citizens start believing that, India would change. If 30 lakh Indian citizens decided to file one RTI application once a month, every month, just as a matter of faith for the nation, 3.5 crore RTI applications would be there. 1 crore times, if a small improvement in the governance structure occurs, in 5 years India would be a different country. And that is possible. You can make it happen. We can make it happen together without getting together. Independent. You don't need an association, you don't need anything. Independently, we just take a vow and say, you go to the mandir on your own. You don't necessarily have to go with a team of people. Similarly, for this, all you need to do is independently use this right. Independently decide that I can change and I will change India. If you do that, we'll get a change. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you.
Hi sir, my name is Rebecca. It was a wonderful workshop. So my question is regarding Sri Krishna Committee's report, which suggested amendments in section 8J. And according to you, like you said, it becomes one of the obvious reasons for exemption of disclosure of information. So it suggested that denial of disclosure of information if there is a possibility of harm to the data principle. But wouldn't that then...
if that goes through, the RTI Act is finished.
Yeah.
And this, Sri Krishna is a very great chap, but I think on this he's made a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
He has modeled it on the way, we've got a very peculiar thing in India now. Everybody in power dislikes RTI. Okay? Everyone dislikes the idea of being transparent himself. Everyone likes the idea of you being transparent. तुमको transparency ज़रूरत है, मुझे ज़रूरत नहीं है. The corrupt dislike RTI for obvious reasons. The honest are arrogant enough to believe, why should anybody ask me what I do? Therefore, a very powerful narrative is being built against right to information. Very, very powerful. My own view is that the Supreme Court judgment on privacy is partly the reason of RTI is their reason behind the back of their mind. They don't like it. People have asked, which foreign trip did a judge go to? How many judgments have been reserved? What did they do? Variety of things. And in one case, a former Chief Justice of India was found to have travelled to a conference in Sydney. His ticket was Delhi, New York, Sydney. He was establishing the borders route. Okay. And not only that, he took his wife along, and there is a per diem allowance given to government servants when you go out somewhere. He claimed that for himself and his wife. So things like this have kept happening. USA and European countries have such exemptions, all personal information barred. In India, our bigger need is corruption. In fact, our preamble states curbing corruption is one of the objectives. In India, the penalty for lying or for giving false information is very poor on the whole. Lots of people give false income certificates, false caste certificates, all kinds of certificates. There is some doubt about the Prime Minister's degree certificate also. So, but this is common. And therefore, if you want to curb this, we need a more powerful disclosure in terms of personal information. And that is why this act was framed like this, which has been forgotten. And even Sri Krishna, he puts the proviso without understanding what he is doing. He's put the proviso. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Provide information that shall not be denied to Parliament or state. If this proviso itself was properly implemented, as a commissioner, I used to ask people, they would say, no sir, this is private, this is that, because it's difficult to come to a conclusion. And I'd ask them, will you give this information to Parliament? They'd say, yes sir. Then you'll have to give it to the citizen. Actually, if you use the law properly, the law is what is written, not what you believe is good. So therefore, if that proviso is there, unfortunately our Supreme Court also just neglects that proviso. As I said, everyone in power dislikes RTI. Now that's a battle that I have written extensively on this. In my opinion, if they do this, today it's de facto. People are denying personal information whenever they want to, without even referring to that subclause. If the data protection law comes in as being suggested, I think it will mean the end of RTI.
Yeah, because it does make sense. It will become the end of RTI because they are hampering or asking us not to give out any kind of information, because in the committee report as well they specify what sensitive personal data is, and basically everything about links to me.
No, in fact, it will become more a denial of information act. And it's done very, very badly. I have a lot of agreement with Justice Sri Krishna, but on this I have a very, very strong disagreement, and I think he is doing India basic disservice. I'm hoping before that citizens will make their resistance known to this. And even if this gets passed, at the end of the day, look, let's assume they pass this law. What should be done? In my opinion, citizens should protest and ask for a change of law. Some people tell me, once the law is passed, what can you do? Even the RTI amendments, some people tell me, Mr. Gandhi, what? Abhi to kanun ban gaya. To me, I look back in history, Indian history. In 1857, we lost the war. We could have just said, kya karenge? Haar gaye. 90 years we struggled, we kept that struggle going. And various different people, they were not together. And ultimately, we developed a different method of communication, different method of protest, and got independence. And if today's citizens can't even fight for their rights with their own government, this is my government. At the end of the day, Narendra Modi, Rahul Gandhi, Arvind Kejriwal, whoever, it's my government, I elect them. If I can't even persuade them to change one law to defend my fundamental rights, I think we need to do greater introspection. I genuinely believe it's not the leaders, it's not the politicians who are failing us. It is we, the citizens, who are being extremely lazy, saying, vote kar diya to bahut ho gaya. We need to change that. I am in complete agreement. If you like, you send me an email, I'll send you lots of things I have written.
Definitely, that will be very helpful. My dissertation is also going to be about this, so it will be very
in that case, come and have a chat with me. You send me an email. My email ID is given.
Yeah.
And I'll be very glad to send you things out.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other question?
अभी बहुत गड़बड़ हो गया.
No question.
I had
Yes, miss.
Come, speak in the mic.
You said that a bill was going to be passed in which it would become subordinate, not equal to that.
No, bill has been passed.
The bill has already been passed.
The president has also signed it. Sitting in Africa, he signed the bill.
So, how does it change the powers? Like, does the implementation power that the information commissioner had, how does it change?
No, the powers are given by other provisions in the law, so the powers don't change. In all fairness, what is being done is they are being demoted. You see, government works on hierarchy. In fact, my government, even private sector, works on hierarchy. The principal will, everybody listen to the principal, but you demote him to an assistant professor's level. Nobody listen to him. You may call him principal. You may say all the powers are with you. So, okay, sorry.
They have to listen to it.
The point is, what happens is when you demote the positions, that's an obvious signal to the lowest public information officer that look, even when I was a commissioner, for example, there were times when somebody wouldn't listen to me. In India, our adherence to laws is not very strong. Okay. In fact, in a set of 10 decisions, I had given to RBI saying defaulters list, audit reports, inspection reports, a whole lot of things should be disclosed. It was 10 different decisions. RBI challenged all of those in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court in 2015 end upheld all my decisions and said RBI must disclose this. Despite that, RBI refused to. 4 months back, a contempt petition was filed against RBI. Now, powerful organizations like this, what do? The Supreme Court also said, this is contempt of court, but we are warning you, don't do it again. They didn't take any action because it's not easy when powerful bodies. Similarly, PIOs quite often do not obey the orders of a commission. If you demote them, the chance of their orders being implemented are still lower. For example, I would tell the Municipal Commissioner of Delhi that you will have to do A, B, C, D. And he would say, sir, main dekhunga. Then of course I would kind of give him a veiled threat and he would do it. But if I become equal to the Municipal Commissioner, he won't even bother about me. So that is really, and there is no rational reason for changing this. Government is not giving any rational reason. It obviously appears, and to be honest, it's believed that one of the things is probably what has really enraged the government is कि वो Prime Minister's degree का जो मामला है, that has probably angered them a lot. I mean, तुम्हारी औकात क्या है? मैं तुमको दिखा दूंगा.